Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained for this very special edition of the Soul of the Unexplained, where we've gotten together with a bunch of our friends, and we all have one thing in common. We were all fortunate enough to have crossed paths with the great Nick Pope. And so we're going to do a little bit of a shooting from the hip tributes to our dearly departed friend, Mr. Nick Pope. And joining us today on the podcast, as always, is the all-star team of the Soul of the Unexplained, Mr. John Stratton, and also Mr. John Nyberger, my favorite Denver Broncos fan. And we also are joined today by Kaleb Bench of Skinwalker Ranch, and also Chris Roberts, the xenoarchaeologist of Skinwalker Ranch, and Mr. Ben Woodruff, the a biologist there that does a lot of work with Skinwalker Ranch as well. So we'll start real quickly. Johnny, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing excellent. I'm enjoying the weather. As people can see, I switched things up a little bit, hanging out here, enjoying a nice scotch in honor of Nick and a cigar.
Yes, indeed. Beautiful, beautiful weather out there, it looks like. And John,
It's
how are you
fantastic.
doing? I got to see you under some unfortunate circumstances, but I did get to see you a couple of weeks ago. How are you doing, brother?
Despite the circumstances, it was fantastic getting to see you. You know, that was pretty great. So other than that, I'm doing really well. I wish
Right
I'd thought of getting some scotch or something, you know. I can't
Right.
really do the cigars. I mean, Jay I tried to do it with Jay once, and I made it through a small one. I just couldn't, I can't do it, but
Yes,
I
indeed.
could do the scotch.
You know,
Yes,
maybe that's
sir.
what I need to open my lungs up again.
There you go. He's
go.
got some stuff for you, Caleb.
Right.
Well, a fantastic aspect of cigar smoke is strep throat. There's an enzyme in the smoke itself that actually kills Streptococcus virus. So, if you're starting to get a strep throat at some point, smoke a cigar.
There you go. Learn something new every day.
You heard it right there from Dr. Stratton, folks.
I only
Caleb,
play
how
one
are
on
you
TV,
doing?
folks.
Doing well, doing well. Well, you guys know that I've been down a little bit the last couple weeks, for about a month. So this is technically my first video or anything that I've actually done in the last month. So
Well, we're happy that you're able to join us today.
yeah.
And Ben, how are you doing, sir? We had you on here not too long ago.
Yep, doing really good. Just keeping busy and planning a big filming expedition to Chaco Canyon here in a few weeks. We're
Oh,
gonna film
sweet.
all the sites. We're gonna spend a whole week down there filming and documenting and teaching. It's gonna be great.
That sounds like an absolute blast. That's so cool. Right on.
That does
And
sound
Chris,
fun. When is that? Might drive down there.
You should still come in. You should come sneak in.
Crash
There's
and
still
party.
room in the group spots, so we're gonna party at night. It's gonna be great. Yeah,
All right.
come on, like second week in May.
Right
It'll be
on.
fun.
Awesome. Speaking of rock stars, Chris Roberts, how are you doing, sir? Good to see you again.
I'm doing good. Doing very good. Been busy with work and play and everything in between.
Right on. Good, good, good. Well, gentlemen, I thought we would start just kind of going around the room here, just sharing some of our favorite memories of Nick Pope. And of course, folks, Nick Pope was one of the more prominent figures in the UAP community, if you will, the UAP investigation community. And Nick has been on all manner of documentaries. He was a regular on the Ancient Aliens program on the History Channel. And I had the great opportunity to meet Nick about 2 years ago for the first time at Phenomicon 2024. And one of my favorite memories, and I was talking with Kaleb, my bandmate and hitchhiker, Kaleb Hanks, about this. And we in the course of our talking with Nick in between Phenomicon activities, we found out that one of his favorite songs was "Take on Me" by Aha. And so anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge synth guy and I'm a huge 80s guy as far as music goes. And so I got together with Kaleb before we went on stage that year at Phenomicon. I said, "Hey, let's start off playing just the beginning of Take on Me." And so the first year that we played as Hitchhiker at Phenomicon, we at some point, I think when Travis was taking his break, Kaleb and I kind of busted into an impromptu rendition of Take on Me for a few bars. and we dedicated that little bit to Nick there. And Nick was sitting there in the corner there with his beer in his hand. He's just doing the waving thing like that, and he was just a the thing that impressed me the most about Nick was how kind he was, how approachable he was, and when he was talking to you, he paid attention to what you were saying, which is always kind of a big thing. And I've always admired how well researched he was on everything. And so my first impression of Nick was that he lived up to the hype as far as, you see these figures that are on TV all the time and you see them in documentaries, and you kind of wonder, at least I do anyway, I kind of wonder, well, gosh, I wonder what they're like in person. And Nick was, to his credit, he was exactly the same really cool, down to earth personality in person as he was that I see on all these programs. Um, any of you want to share your first experience getting to meet Nick for the first time?
I mean,
didn't-
I'd
Oh,
say yeah,
sorry.
same.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say about pretty much the same thing. I mean, meeting him, I was like, he was the most genuine person. He was who he was. The person you saw on the TV shows, that was who he actually was. He was genuine, and he cared about what you had to say. And it was it. It, Normally, I don't really get starstruck by people. I just think all people are people, right? But the first time I saw him, from my childhood, it's like seeing all these documentaries, then meeting him, and then I actually did have a little bit of that starstruck, and he was just completely genuine and nice, and I really appreciated that sincerity. He seemed to really care about what I had to say.
Yeah, 100%. John, you had something you
No,
wanted to share?
I was going to say, just similar to your experience, my biggest memory, my first time meeting him was at Phenomicon as well. And my first thought was, this guy seems pretty cool. At first, that was just our initial greeting. But then later, when we were playing, and, we're up there on stage and we've got our own stash of, beer and drinks off to the side of the stage. He's over there drinking out of that, dancing, and, it was great to look over and see this dude over there. I'm like, yeah, he's the real dude. He's real. He's a real dude. He's like Ben just said, like some people, some quote unquote celebrities that you see on TV, you meet them in person, and they're kind of they're either on or they're off. They're like they have two different personalities for when they're on or they're off. He wasn't like that. He was every time I met him or spoke with him, he was exactly the same. Always friendly, always funny.
Yep.
Yeah, that was just. I didn't get to speak with him too much, but that was my impression of the guy.
Yeah, 100%. Caleb, what was it like for you first time you got to meet Nick?
I'm assuming it's pretty much like most everybody here. I was at Phenomicon a couple of years ago. And it was kind of cool because Nick and also William Henry, and it was because they were doing an Ancient Aliens panel at Phenomicon. And so I believe it was those two, Travis, and I don't think Giorgio came out that first year. He
No, he
finally
didn't.
came out
Yeah.
last year during
Last year, yeah.
2025 Phenomicon. So that's when I met him. But I met and spent quite a bit of time with William Henry and Nick that first year, and it was pretty cool seeing that he was a big fan of what we were doing out on the ranch. And I honestly, like, I knew Nick Pope because of Travis. Would talk about the Ancient Alien stuff during off time from filming the Skinwalker Ranch show, right? So that was my real introduction to Nick, was through Travis, and then finally meeting him in person at Phenomicon. You guys I just have to say that, exact same thing that's already said, is very genuine person, very funny. I'll say this is what always made me kind of laugh, was they would always joke, because I guess with the popularity of Ancient Aliens, they were doing these Ancient Alien live shows for the last couple of years, right? Where they would get 3 or 4 guys and they travel around to different cities and do these live shows and interact with people. And we got to do that about a year ago for the Skinwalker live tour. And so kind of understanding what they were doing. So they had multiple vehicles, and William Henry and Travis and Nick Pope were all very much on one side of the aisle politically, as opposed to Giorgio and a couple other individuals.
Right.
And Nick Pope, I guess, nicknamed their vehicle, Giorgio's vehicle, Commie One. And they would nickname Travis's and William Henry and Nick's vehicle Patriot One. And so it was, they would
That
always,
sounds like Travis.
yeah, right. So they'd be like, we were always the three in that vehicle, and we'd put the commies in the other vehicle. But they were like, they all got along. They all, there was no animosity in that group,
No.
but they definitely ribbed each other about their views and stuff. So it was just one of those things that hearing that and then meeting Nick, and he would definitely like throw in jokes like that all the time. And it was just one of those things I was like, knowing the work that he'd been involved in and what he'd done, it's kind of that thing where it's like, gives you a little bit of hope that there's individuals like that are still in positions and so just again, very cool seeing that he's down to earth, has had a really good head on his shoulders, and again, just genuinely good with people.
Yeah, right on. And Chris, have you did you get a chance to meet Nick this last time, or the back in 2024 as well? What do you have any memories with him?
Last year at Phenomicon, I did basically get to brush shoulders with him, be in the same room, and I was definitely starstruck with who he was, how he came across. I was a little apprehensive with really talking freely with him, but I know that I've really loved all the different interviews he's done and the way he comes across and his humor and
Yes.
the mind that he has. Aligns with so many of the research questions that I have. So it just, he's a phenomenal person to be in this sphere of what we study. And I've always loved his humor. And of course, having the accent he has makes everything sound smarter, whether it's a joke or whatever he's doing. So it'll be missed in that realm. But yeah, I saw him at the panels and, and then again was backstage when he was back there, but I wasn't sure about who to approach at different times. You never know how different people are. So I didn't actually get to meet him face to face, but just being in his presence was quite an honor.
Right on. And Johnny, I know that you in particular had a very special relationship with Nick, and you want to take a moment and just kind of talk to us about some of your favorite memories of Nick?
I wouldn't know if I'd call it a super special relationship, but he and I did get a little close, and our time at Phenomicon, I'll talk about that, but let's talk a little bit about who Nick Pope was as a person that the viewer at home may not know, because they've watched a couple episodes of Ancient Aliens here, or a little bit of this there. They might not know him. So that's what he's most famous for, of course, is the Ancient Aliens, but he's also been on was Expedition Files, is that the name of it? And UFO Unexplained something. Shoot, I had these written down. I should have actually looked at it. But he's been on a lot of things. What a lot of people don't really know is why he's on those things. So, of course, 21 years in the Ministry of Defense in the British government. Who knows what that guy is saying? I've been trying to remember all week. All week I've been trying to remember what it was that he would say all the time. I pray somebody knows. Because he had his own version of, if I told you I'd have to kill you, but it was something along the lines of, well, if I told you, they would kill me.
Yeah.
He would remind people that
he was putting it on the Invisible Man.
Yeah. He had such a creative way of expressing that, I have an answer, but I can't tell you anything because I swore an oath that is until I die, I cannot speak. And that's what he and I had a brilliant conversation about this, and there was a couple other people there, of the United States government. They have a timeline. They have a non-disclosure timeline. The British government, it's till you die.
It's till you die.
So it was really fascinating, what could he have said had he had a timeline that would run out? What could he have said? Who knows what he got into? But, I tried to look him up. I tried to write a beautiful bio because I feel like his man really deserves it. But while doing my research, I realized there's one thing that if we had to say he was a stereotype, he is definitely a stereotype when it comes to being a government spook, because I couldn't find anything on the guy's upbringing as a child. His, his first mention in history is when he graduated college. So, I really wanted to look into that because he talked privately so much about his family, his parents, everybody. But I found that he didn't talk very publicly about any of that. So, all the stories and stuff we've talked about with his family, I'm going to respect the fact that he didn't tell anything to anyone public, and we'll keep that little bit between us. But someone who he never was shy about publicly praising is his absolutely amazing wife. Oh, his amazing wife, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, yeah.
She and I never had a chance to meet. She was actually planning to come to Phenomicon this past year. I'm not sure what really happened with that. She never traveled with Nick in his entire, what are we looking at, 40 years career of traveling? She never traveled with him. But knowing about the cancer and him getting a little bit run down, she had actually originally planned to come out to Phenomicon. And I was excited to be able to meet her just because of how fondly he speaks of her all the time. But, meeting Nick, I wasn't starstruck. I don't really get starstruck very easily, so I'm special. I'm weird. I don't know. I was just raised in a way I don't really get starstruck.
No, that's actually a good thing. That's how a lot of us are. I think that, we're all kind of that way is, look, dude, like we're all people, and I'm not going to bow down to you just because you think you're, or, for whatever reason. There's definitely people I'll tip my hat to, but it's because they've done something to earn that kind of respect, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing.
I won't just walk up to the president of the United States, but I'll try to have a conversation. But, I have had no problem walking up to people and starting conversations. I made the mistake of doing that one time with a certain celebrity that, because it was a negative interaction, I'll let it be, but he was having a bad day, and he made sure I felt it. But it happens. People in this group might know who I'm talking about, but, I walk into the green room and Nick is sitting there early in the morning on, I think it was the first day of Phenomicon, not this past year, but 2024, I believe, or 25. Yeah, 24. And, it was early in the morning. He's the first other person there and he's getting coffee. Turned out every day of Phenomicon, he and I would have coffee together every morning and we would sit there and we'd talk. Some of the conversations that we had, I have no idea how we got onto them. But at one point we had about a 2-hour long conversation. And when I mean 2 hours, I mean, we were sitting there going for 2 hours talking about 18th century military logistics.
Sounds like the first time you and I got to talking with Roger the one time, Caleb.
Right.
Before we know it, 2 hours, 3 hours passes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're going into detail about where they place latrines in relation to the kitchens and the punishments in relation to people going and relieving themselves in the wrong place. We were talking about how would we move all of these military materials, these supplies, the food across these territories without paved roads, without cars. Like, it was a wild conversation. And we started getting kind of into the Napoleonic era. And I'm like, I don't know anything about that aspect. I'm like 1740 to 1799. Anything beyond that, I have no clue. But it was a solid 2 hours we sat there talking about military history. And, I don't think we even touched the UFO topic outside of him just asking, right along one of his favorite quotes the internet's favorite quotes about whether we're alone in the universe is not a question, but whether we've been visited, And he would ask me one of those questions. It was probably 10 minutes. That's probably the most he and I had ever talked about UFOs. It was all about our families, about travel, history, and it was fascinating because Nick is a very high-profile guy, very well-educated, very well-respected. The man's on more History Channel episodes than just about anyone else. And yet, talking to little old me, someone who didn't even go to college, didn't do any crazy stuff in the government, showing me the amount of respect he would give a college professor, someone at his level, treating me like a peer, having these fantastic conversations. That's something I really love. And, seeing him last year, it was a little sad. He and I did not really get to talk very much. It was very difficult, I believe, for him to do much at Phenomicon this past year.
Yeah, that was
But,
one of the hard things, was seeing that difference from the first time I met him, right, that previous year to last year. Seeing the change, and that's where, like, Travis, he let us know a little bit before him, and Nick only spent like just a couple days last year. He wasn't there the whole time, if I remember right, because of that. And that was the thing, is like, he was just like, Travis, like, he doesn't want to be treated any different, and that's how we, my interactions with him, I just treated him like normal, right? Because it wasn't very long ago that they actually announced that he was battling that cancer, and we knew months and months ago. And it was just one of those things, like, it was kind of like, hey, this is what's going on. No, we don't want it out there, but because him, like,
Yeah. Well, you touched upon something really interesting, Johnny. That how when you were talking with Nick, you didn't really talk about UAPs per se. And it was the same way with me. The first time that I walked up and introduced myself to Nick, it was, just basically, hi, how you doing? I'm a big fan of the work that you've done. And then he started kind of like interviewing me, like asking me questions. Oh, where are you from? What do you do? And that, of course, kicked off a great conversation about his love of music. And, me being a big music freak, we instantly connected with music. And it's really interesting because there's somebody else that was exactly the same way for me. And that, of course, is your dad, Johnny. That, whenever I have the occasion to be hanging out with your dad, I don't talk to him about UFOs, UAPs, or even Skinwalker Ranch. And it sounds odd because obviously I have an interest in both of those subjects, but like even with you, Kaleb, I mean, whenever we get together and talk, it's not so much about that. It's just about just regular stuff that friends talk about, right? Our families and, different experiences. And Nick, it was really interesting when you mentioned that, Johnny, because that's the first thing that I thought of, is that Nick was the same way with me. It wasn't, when we got to talking about things, it was not ever really about UAPs. It was just one human being connecting to another human being, and that looking back now, that's going to mean so much more to me, and it does mean more to me now to know that I got to connect with Nick, brief as though it was, because I haven't known him for years. But it was just like that. It was like I got to know him a little bit more as a person, as opposed to this media figure that I saw on all these TV shows and documentaries. And that's one of the things that I really really liked about that. Is that, if that makes any sense to anybody?
Well,
in a way, why would we want to get together with people that we're meeting and talk about work? Because that's sort of how it is you would be going up to him and talking about work if we were talking about that.
Well,
Right.
and
People don't come up to me and talk about work.
right. Well, you guys are making me think too, especially when it comes to, say, Nick and like your dad too, John. It makes me think. There was a thing in the military called like the silent professional, and that's kind of been this cultural thing for years at that level. And it's like your dad, John, knows more about the topic than anybody, right? He knows everybody, he knows everything pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And he knows what he can and can't say, and his agreements and all that stuff. I'd imagine that was the same thing with Nick too, right? And it's like, they didn't, like, all these people are trying to project that, like, oh, look at me, look what I know, or the information that I have now. But it's not how that's not how Nick operated. It's not how your dad operates. it's like they know what they know, and it's like if the conversation goes that way naturally, great. But it's not like they have to project it. It's like people just know. You just walk into the room and like your dad, he's
A
pretty
silent
quiet.
professional doesn't need
Yeah,
anybody else's approval.
right.
Exactly.
It's that silent confidence. It's that actual. I know my business. I stand on my business, but and they're just normal. At the end of the day, they're still just normal people. You know,
Yeah.
and that's just what it kind of makes me think of because same thing. Like the only time I think I ever had a conversation with Nick, um, in regards to like say the topic was I can neither confirm nor deny that he may have made it to Skinwalker Ranch a couple times, um, and
That is
talking
publicly
about
known.
right, um, and going around and to some different sites and talking about things in relation to the show or the public facing work. Right. And having some of some of that conversation with him and him asking questions in relation to things that, he knew about,
Yeah.
and it just makes it because I'll say I remember him talking about doing some investigative work, in England at some of for some of the more famous, cases, if you will, that have come out of England and their military sites and their bases and things that have happened with personnel there. But it was very generic, you know, and it was and he was connecting dots, if you will, to things that have happened on the ranch that are public facing,
Yeah.
right?
It's excellent point that you make there, Caleb, because that's like the number one thing that I always tell people about Jay Stratton is that the way Jay carries himself and the dignified way that he's not like some of these other prominent figures that are out there trying to call attention to themselves and saying, "Hey, look at what I've got going on over here." Come and, Jay is not like that, and neither was Nick. At least not my experiences with Nick. He was exactly like you say. He had that silent professionalism. He he stood on his business, and he was always very focused. And when he had something to say, he would say it. And somebody like Jay, when Jay speaks up, you listen to what he's got to say because it's probably going to be pretty profound. And Nick was the same way. At least that was the impression that I always had of him. And to that end, I mean, that's one thing that I can actually also extend to you, Caleb, and to you, Chris, and to you, Ben, is that you're all that way. You all carry yourselves with that same kind of silent professionalism, and you have that dignified manner that really just exudes that professionalism. And
John,
that's
what does that
just
say about us?
well, you didn't give me a chance to get there, Johnny. Well, John's a Broncos fan, so you already know how I feel about that.
You guys can't make me laugh.
But no, but
You should
We're gonna
hear me
make
at
Caleb
work at 3
pass
o'clock
out,
in the
guys.
morning. I'm not very
He's
much of
gonna
a
turn blue and
silent
fall out of his chair.
or a
Right.
professional at 3 o'clock in the morning at work. I'm neither silent nor professional.
Right. There's
and
times where it's
I'm over.
definitely not that.
If I'm
I'm
at
here.
work, if I'm awake, you're awake. Turn the sirens on.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. But no, that's something that for me as a fan of the endeavors that you guys are all engaged in, that's really important to me to see that you are real human beings, that you are not caught up in the celebrity, as it were, as we see a lot of people getting. And that's something that the importance of which can't be overstated, in my opinion, because there's so many people out there, without dropping any names, that really just kind of want to be, they want the attention, they want the focus. And I'm sure, particularly with Nick and with you guys as well, being on a television show that's so prominent, like The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, or in Nick's case, Ancient Aliens, you have untold millions of people that have seen your face and that have seen you participate in these programs, and to be able to maintain that air of humility, for want of a better word, I think is something that speaks volume to the integrity of every one of you, as well as to Nick, and yes, even you too, Johnny. John, of course, obviously John as well. If there's anybody that's questionable, it's probably this guy right here. But no, that was something that I always appreciated
We're all
about
highly
Nick, is that he
questionable,
was.
sir.
What's that?
Officer, I swear I didn't do it. We're all highly questionable.
I respectfully invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege. Right. So yeah, that was I really appreciate the your take on that, Caleb. Chris, it looked like you were gonna chime in there in a moment.
Um, yeah, I was just thinking about, you guys were talking about meeting and spending this time with Nick, and all I've realized over kind of thinking back to his career and his interviews and his interactions with everybody is that I have an overwhelming sense of regret that I didn't take that opportunity to sit and have time with him, because he does say so many things that are so insightful, to the stuff that's in the UK, to where it shines a light on that from everybody in America, if they see what was there, to the UFO and UAP history that's there, and there's so much. There's a really rich history of written books, the Dark Gods, the Goblin Universe, all these really interesting things from the 60s and 70s, that there's a great history in the rest of the world. And then the way he came across with, like, what I've tried to talk to people about is geologic age of the world and the universe, and that we can't even conceive of what that really means. Um, and he eloquently states that, and really just kind of nonchalantly, hey, this is what it is. And just the way he comes across is just another person. And his humor. I just really relate to him, and that was just my thoughts, thinking I would meet him someday, and there's that regret right there. So that's
Yeah,
just what I was thinking about.
right on. Thanks
That's
for
an
sharing that with us,
important
Chris.
factor when it comes to life and death is, we will regret the moments we don't take advantage of. So whenever you have the opportunity to talk to someone, spend time with someone, always try to make that effort.
That is for sure.
Something you only learn in
100%.
hindsight. It's a sad
Tomorrow
lesson
is
we only learn the hard way.
tomorrow is never promised, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah,
And Father Time is undefeated.
that is true.
Which
Yeah,
that just
that's
reminds me that like we got to have that very talk on that very topic with Ben.
Yeah.
yes,
Like
Ben.
we need to sit down, Ben, and have a good like
The talk.
2 or 3 hour talk like this, going over that very topic. 'Cause
We
Ben's
actually
unique
should, 'cause
experience.
Yeah.
Can you have a human skeleton there to go, hey, this is where you're going to be in like 50,
It's
60
gotta
years?
be like a saber tooth or like a cave bear or something.
Well, the one thing that I'll just say this for this. So when you can go anywhere at any time. I did very little with the time part, and that was the first thing when people found out. In the other side, you had time on the other side. Did you go? Did you go see the dinosaurs? And I was in the hospital. I was blind at a time, from the strokes, and I'm like, no, I didn't. Ah! And I was like, that was my biggest regret. I was on the other side that I didn't go see the dinosaurs. Well, it wasn't on my mind at the time. So, yeah, but going to the other side is, there's nothing to worry about. There's no rush to be there. You don't want to be in any rush to be there, even if you are, even if you are, if you're riddled with bone cancer, if you're dying, if you're stuck in prison for something you've done, hang on to every second that you can. Every second, last one more second, because time it doesn't exist on the other side, and you will savor even the bad, even the painful. You'll see when you're there, you'll be like, oh, I see what he was talking about. You'll be like, yep, I immediately see what he meant. But every second connected to linear time is something to savor. It's and then you're free. It's
Cool. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Every second connected to linear time is something
Yeah.
to savor. What?
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in that one sentence.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
didn't mean to detract,
No,
but
no,
I think we
because
have
I
another
know
topic
that
for another
it's Ben's
episode.
experience,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
and like that's
absolutely.
something that I'm like,
Are we sure
all
we
that you
can call
guys,
that lived experience?
right?
Yeah.
Because what was it? It was because Ben came out. He was helping track a carcass that myself and the other security guard Nate on the ranch we were kind of paying attention to on a nearby property, and Ben was helping us with that. We ended up having a really good conversation with Ben for a couple hours one day. Chris was there, and it was
Yeah.
just one of those. It was just a very cool conversation. It was one of those things where we were like, "This is the type of thing we need to sit down and do this like once a month and
Mhm.
Oh, hell
go
yeah.
through this just based on our experiences."
Yeah.
Well,
You know,
and one thing that I want to add to that, Ben, that's one of the things that I've enjoyed so much being connected with you on social media is these little Facebook Live things that you do because you know, most of you know that I suffered a real serious head injury this last year, and you don't really realize how fragile of a condition sometimes you're in until you lose the ability to do things that you've done all of your life, like something as simple as being able to stand up and walk,
Yeah.
being able to, go to the bathroom by yourself. Sorry, bad graphics there, I realize, but and I had things taken from me that I took for granted. And it's the one thing that in hindsight, looking back, is it's given me a deeper appreciation
Yeah.
for life and how fragile time is and how it's a construct of the world that we live in, but it's something that we need to invest in more wisely and use what little time we have the most expedient way that I guess we can is the way that I would phrase it. And so I've really enjoyed your perspectives that you put out there periodically, Ben. I mean, seriously, it's like really there's been a couple where I've been like, yeah, dude, I know I know
Jump
exactly
right in.
what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear other people feel that way. And time is such a fleeting thing. And John, I'm sure you've experienced that recently when you go through the loss of a loved one. That's when those moments come in, and you're like, if I could have just had one more moment to spend with this person that I loved. I think back to both my mom and my dad when they were um, in the process of passing, and being able to be there in those moments meant so much. And thankfully, my mom and dad raised me to always, cherish every moment that you spend with your family, your siblings, your spouse, your children. And so when it came time for my mom and dad to finally to pass, it was something that I was prepared for. There wasn't a lot left unsaid between me and my mom and my dad, and that helps me so much because I look at so many other people that have had instances where they've lost a loved one, and they didn't have the opportunity to mend whatever fences needed to be mended or things like that. And whenever we lose a close friend or somebody like a prominent figure in our community like Nick Pope, it's a good opportunity for me to kind of do that little self inventory of, okay, have I expressed to the people that matter the most to me how much they mean to me and how much they add to my life and keep me going. I mean, it's it's something that matters a lot to me. And to hear you guys recognize that, and Ben, you especially, that's a conversation, if you guys ever have that, I would love to be a fly on the wall, because that's kind of where my mind is right now, and that's kind of where I'm just trying to make the world around me a better place, to make myself a better person.
Mhm.
And it's a constant ongoing struggle, and I probably fail at it more often than I succeed, but the importance is to keep trying, right? And surrounding yourself with people that recognized the value in those little things, as it were. And I know, Kaleb, you and I, that first conversation we had at Phenomicon, that allowed me to see how good of an actual genuine human being you are, and
Oh, thank you.
it follows through with just the person that you are. And Chris, I've only been able to know you for a short period of time, but I get the same exact vibe from you, and you as well, Ben, and Johnny and John. You guys are like brothers to me. I mean, we're all, it's I guess that's the one thing that I would say is thank you for allowing me to be able to be a part of your lives and to feel that influence that each of you bring. And it's at these times when those things, I guess, kind of come into perspective, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Well, and
Yeah.
on a related note, you were saying how it's important to at least think about how people around you in your life have affected you, and to be grateful for that. And a lot of that is present company included. We run in some really strange circles sometimes. Like life brings those strangest opportunities and the weirdest meetings into your life, right? Like it's and like you said, some of the people we've met, like you're a brother. I mean, I'd call Johnny a brother, but he's more of a nephew now. But it's absolutely true that
We
just
do
life with
share a
Nick Pope.
relative.
Hey, we've been
Yeah,
adopted by the Stratton family, so
yeah, they're pretty great.
Yep.
But
I
just
was
like with
actually
Nick Pope.
adopted by your lovely mom.
Oh, my mom met Johnny, and they adopted each other. It was the fastest non-legal adoption I've ever seen in my life.
She was an amazing woman.
Dude, after every time I talk to her, ever since you met, she'd be like, "How's my other grandson doing?"
that's awesome.
Yep. But yeah, I was just gonna say, the people that you meet, just even along the road, you never know when that person might have an impact on your life. Just like Nick, though. Nick's a perfect example. You have these people that you only get to interact with a little bit, and just like Chris, I have a little regret as well, because this past year I knew he was sick. I knew that would be the last time I'd see him. And I saw him in the green room. I had no idea what to say. I mean, it was just morning. He was asking about where someone was or where something was. And, we
Yeah.
it was just chit chat for a second. And he's like, well, I got to go do such and such a thing. I think that was the only time I saw him. Maybe I saw him one other time, but I
And
wish
Yeah.
I'd taken
I'm
the
a little
time
bit
to
in the
say
same boat.
something.
We
other
didn't
than
really
that.
talk a whole lot this time because I knew he wasn't feeling well. I knew he was having trouble just speaking. So I didn't want to
Yeah.
sit there and have him talk and go through conversation that he was trying to rest. So it was very hard this past year for anybody really to have conversation. We could
Yeah.
spend time, but driving a conversation was very tough for him.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I have regret of not spending a little more time with him, but I also I knew what was going on and felt like if I bugged him or kept him going, it would make things harder. It's a very weird situation to try to balance, the love and respect for someone and spending time with them and wearing them out when they don't have a lot of energy and they have to be public facing. It's
Right.
Right.
Well,
difficult.
that's it. I wouldn't want to wear him out in a conversation when he doesn't know me. He's met me like twice. Like, let him save his energy to go talk to, people he actually knows.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I might have been there with you backstage there, John, when Nick came in
Probably.
that one morning and we sat down and talked, and I commended him on the documentary that he'd putting together about COVID and whatnot. And we just talked for just a few minutes, and that was this last year. Probably at the most, I had maybe 5 or 10 minutes with him, and then I don't think I really saw him again throughout the remainder of the conference because of the different activities that I was doing and whatnot. But I'm grateful I had that first year in 2024 that I had a more of an extended time to spend with him and get to know him a little bit. And I'll be grateful for that for the remainder of my days, because he was one of those celebrities that lived up to the expectation. and we've kind of touched upon this already, but I look back at a lot of the celebrities and heroes that I've met, and there's been some that have lived up to the expectation. There's been a couple that didn't live up to the expectation, and there's been some that exceeded the expectation. And Nick would fall in the latter for me. He definitely exceeded all of my expectations of how cool and down to earth he would be. And he, I have nothing but good, positive memories and kind things to say about Nick, and just the way that he carried himself. Again, going back to that, just what a great example. The thing about me that most of you probably know is being a New Yorker, I get kind of hot under the collar sometimes, and so
No.
seeing, well, and trust me, my wife has been trying to cure me of it for the last 30 some odd years. But yeah, you can take the New Yorker out of New York, but you can't take the New York out of the New Yorker. Um, but no, I'm grateful that Nick was who he was, and he lived up and exceeded all the expectations that I had. So that was cool. So
I think
just
that I find. Oh, sorry. I think that
no,
I
go ahead.
find it odd to call people celebrities sometimes, is not to offend anybody here, but I don't look at you guys or anybody really as a celebrity. Once I get to know you,
People are just people.
you're just Ben,
Yeah.
Caleb, Chris. You're my friends.
Yep.
So I don't really
I
have
agree.
that celebrity look in the back of my head when I see people.
Yep.
We're investigating this thing like everybody else is, but Nick had the honor of being the real life Fox Mulder.
Yeah.
Nickname that. How
Yeah.
cool is
Right.
that? Right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
how cool do you get to be that guy from the X-Files, that they relate to someone doing it, not as an actor, but in real life? I don't think it gets cooler than that.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's one
amazing.
of the excuse me. That was one of the thoughts that I had. Because one of the questions that we get as a Skinwalker team at, like, say, Phenomenon is, how has it changed your life or something like that, right? Something along those lines. And it like the biggest thing is just people that have come into our lives, right? Or how these people have come together, right? How there's been this intersection and the caliber of person that have come in on the investigation, and it's like these people you never would have thought of or would have never even had the opportunity to meet before, right?
Yeah.
And that was something that we talked about as a team on the Skinwalker side a couple times, and have mentioned in interviews and stuff before. Is it's like everybody on the team was there for a reason, kind of thing. And now by extension, it's like I never would have met any of you guys if if it hadn't been for the ranch, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, like, Nick's path, I'd imagine it was the same thing. Is like he had interactions with people that probably never even crossed his mind of having need of that person in some way, maybe, or like the information that some individual had, and they just happened to cross paths for whatever reason, and it probably helped him in one of his investigations, something like that, right? And that's probably kind of coming back is like one of the most valuable things that I would say I've gained from this is, having the interaction, say Ben or Chris, subject matter experts in what they're doing, and the love that they have for those fields. And then, and then again, by extension, like, say, a Pete Kelsey, the team from Sky Elements, getting to know Preston and their guys, and all these other individuals. It's like, that's probably been one of the coolest, if not the coolest thing, or experience out of this entire thing is the individuals coming in, and again, the caliber that it seems that most, there's been a few duds, if you will, but at the end of the day, it's mostly high caliber, exceptional people coming in, very professional, very cool, get to know, and finding common ground on a lot of things, and finding out just how many people really, kind of think the same way you do,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can think back not very long ago, not really knowing many of the people, not knowing Travis, not knowing a lot of the people that come on, Dave Mason,
Mhm.
Jan, all these guys, not
Yeah.
knowing them. And then within minutes, knowing them and then really getting to know them and just how interesting that human aspect is and how awesome it is. It really is what keeps everything going and working together and all the communication we have. And I remember
Mhm.
the moment one of the moments maybe similar to what you're talking about. We're all sitting around the table of there's a reason for everything. And it was a pretty surreal moment when we had that conversation
Yeah.
and it's really stuck with me because I think that was a first season I was there, and it was like, wow, there's something
Mhm.
going on here. And it did strike a chord that every interaction and everyone involved plays a part in all of this. And you never know what interaction is going to lead to the next clue or whatever it happens to be,
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Isn't it rather fascinating just how fast you get pulled into the fold, as if from just getting to know this person to you're one of their best friends and they're inviting you to do everything. It's
Yeah.
very quick that you get that deep with the guys when you're out there or around.
Yeah. It's interesting, and John and I have talked about this a number of times, and Roger as well. And it's like we keep in the case of John and I. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but we still periodically have to pinch ourselves, and it's like, how did we end up where we are? How did we end up where John and I are friends with all of you and with Jay and with Travis and with everybody? And it kind of speaks to that. And it's like when I again, going back to when Roger and I met you for the first time, Caleb, there was just an instant connection there. And just it's been such an honor to be able to consider all of you my friends. Travis the same way. I mean, I was you. It wasn't a case of I was starstruck with Travis. It was more a case of I was kind of intimidated by him. you know, it's
Why?
like,
Why be intimidated by Travis?
right. I mean, and you guys have all seen me in person. I'm a fairly big guy. I'm about the size of Caleb, just a lot fatter. But Travis is like, he's maybe comes up to about here on me or thereabouts, but he's a force unto himself. But once I got to know Travis, I learned what an absolute good, decent human being Travis Taylor is. He is one of the greatest guys you could ever consider as a friend. He's a true friend. He's a just a. I literally have nothing bad to say about him. He's just one of those guys um, that has improved my life in so many ways being connected to him. And it's that way with all of you. I mean, everybody has a different personality, but Jay intimidates me as well. But they're all just really really good guys, and I'm
Mhm.
grateful that I've had the opportunity to find myself in this circle of friends that I'm in. And I don't know what I did in my life to be able to deserve this, but I don't take an ounce of it for granted. It's just and I know that Roger feels the same way. And unfortunately, Roger can't be with us today because he's still dealing with some health issues. But on that note, gentlemen, let's kind of just wrap this up and go around the room real quickly and just some closing thoughts and remarks about Nick and about the general topics that we've talked about today. And let's see, who am I going to start with? John Nyberger. Let's start with you once again.
Well, I'll speak very generally. It kind of touches on what we were just talking about. Doesn't it kind of feel like we all start our lives on our own tributaries of some river that we're all like flowing toward? And at different times you're floating down the river and somebody else pops in from this other tributary and they're like, hey, and then you meet and then you're together for a while and then you float down the river a little further and someone else comes along. And next thing you know, it's like you've got this group of people that are in your life. And it seems like Caleb just said, everybody is there for a reason.
Yeah.
That's what sometimes it's weird. Like you're like, this almost seems purposeful. Like this was actually this sequence of events was meant to happen. It's really odd, but I know every one of you knows exactly what I'm talking
I
about
know
because you've
exactly what you mean.
experienced it, right? And touching back on Nick, his life, I'm sure was the same way. Like he touched all of us in slightly different ways. Like I didn't know the guy, I just met him a few times, but literally 100% of the people I think that ever met him was touched by him, by his personality and his humor and his friendliness and just how genuine he is. And I guess that's really all I can say.
Right on. Thanks so much for that, John. Ben, how about you? Closing thoughts and remarks.
So my thoughts on it. This topic matters a lot to me, and it should matter to the whole world. It's a
Agreed.
profound topic. I appreciate that Nick, both behind the scenes and in the public face, helped to further this topic, to get people talking about it, to bring information out, and to do it in a way that was approachable. Anytime you ever listen to him, it seemed you're like, oh yeah, this isn't crazy to be talking about this. These are profound human questions, and we should be able to talk about them and discuss them and debate them. And he made that possible years ago. He was kind of at the forefront of that, and just he was such a genuine man. I remember when I just found out, I'm like, we lost a good one. That's a big loss. He lived a great life, and he was a great man, but we that's a heavy loss. And I think that we carry that. If we were indifferent, then it's not a big loss. And the fact that it does hurt, that it shows a lot, tells about how good of a man he was. So I'm grateful for all he did.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Chris, closing thoughts and remarks from you.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up on both their comments, yeah, the ebb and flow of life. You've got people coming into your life and then exiting your life and this whole thing. And I feel, when I came into the realm of this, not really knowing what it was and trying to learn about it, he was a figure in that with Ancient Aliens, with this, this English demeanor, and the way he came across was just really, really cool. It was like out of a movie, and the way he speaks about everything so matter-of-factly, in everything he talks about. Well, this has to be real. This has to be this. Of course, this. But then look at this. What do the alien Beatles sound like? Like when he's talking about rock and roll and
Right.
music on other places. Very interesting, everything he brings up. And then I felt this somewhat camaraderie with him because he would have asked years ago the questions that are coming to my mind now from what I do, what I've now been faced with just in the last couple of years. So I really felt a brotherhood in that, and I do feel lost. And rest in peace, Nick Pope. He is a great loss to everything that everyone is doing.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much. Caleb, closing thoughts and remarks from you.
I guess two things that popped up in my head last listen to everybody is one, anytime anytime someone passes away, library burns to the ground. 'Cause it's like you never know what information that that you're not going to be able to hear from that person anymore, right? Then the other thought was just kind of following up a little bit like what Ben and Chris are saying is recently I don't know if it's like say a rule or a law, like say like a natural law, whatever, but I heard it's like the rule of five or the law of five. Essentially what that is generally the people in your life that you have right now in 5 years, 90% of them won't be there. Just because everyone's paths are different. Certain people, for whatever reason, they come in, say like prime example, like and who we're talking about right now, Nick, um, came into my life 2-3 years ago, and now he's not here anymore. And it was kind of one of those things where, yeah, kind of reminds me of when my dad passed away, and there's a point where it's like you expect certain people to be there for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. So like me, I was 24. I was my dad was 45, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh, my dad's going to be here till he's 80." Nope. Right. And Nick, I'm not saying that I was like expecting him to be there like on that type of a personal level. But I was like, oh, it's Nick Pope. That's cool. He's saying he wants to come to PhenomCon as long as they're doing it, and we can have these interactions and get to talk and kind of catch up and grow that relationship that way, right? And it was like, oh, well, then you get the news last year, and it's like, oh man, like, you know. And so there was a lot more appreciation of that memories, and then having that time more of going, oh, I know Nick's not going to be here for very long. It just kind of made me think, though, of that is very true. Like, think about it. A lot of people in your life come in and out. And, I was thinking about like college. There's all these guys that I knew in college or when I was in the military. And it was like, very rarely do I reach out to them or they reach out to me. And, there's, again, very few who kind of keep in somewhat of a good contact, but 90% of everybody else, it's like, you're not going to see him for 20 years probably or ever again.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Johnny, closing thoughts and remarks from you, sir.
Wow. I'm just blown away by that statement because I'd never quite thought of it that way, though. Every time someone passes away, a library burns down. That is a cut very deep of a statement right there. Well, I think that ultimately we all have to recognize we're truly blessed. Not that Skinwalker Ranch is really the main factor, but
No.
I wouldn't have met Nick if it wasn't for that. I wouldn't have met all of you guys if it wasn't for that. So I'm very thankful for the connection we've had there. I've realized none of us had mentioned the proper way to say Skinwalker Ranch according to Nick, of Skinwalker Ranch. It's ranch, not ranch. I feel I'd be remiss if I did not mention the fact that we've all been pronouncing it wrong for years. According to Nick, it is the Skinwalker Ranch.
We were actually giving him a little grief for, so it's raunchy. It's a little raunchy.
Right.
It's
Right.
raunchy.
I was
Very
going to say, I'm going to
raunchy.
bite my tongue. I'm going to bite my tongue on that.
Very raunchy of you, Nick. Very raunchy.
Yes. Yeah, I think about that all the time, is him having the debate with Travis and him trying to say it right. It's like, no, man, no, it's ranch, like the dressing.
Oh,
Gosh.
yes, indeed.
But yeah,
Yes,
I'm just thankful we've all had the opportunity to meet such wonderful people and have an impact on each other's lives, hopefully.
100%. I know I sure am. Gentlemen, I don't know if all of you have a beverage handy, but if you do, if you'd join me in a toast to the great human being that was Nick Pope, to the man who really was a true advocate for disclosure, the man that placed a greater value on being a good person, I think, more than anything else, and a man that taught us that there's always there's great value in the people that you surround yourself with, and just pursuing the mysteries of life and the universe, and to be able to share that journey with people like all of you and people like Nick. What a great blessing such a thing is. So to that end, Nick, this one's for you, buddy. We
Cheers
miss
to
you and
Nick.
we wish you well
We miss you.
on a fond journey. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Alrighty, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. And a very big thank you to Mr. Ben Woodruff and to Chris Roberts, Kaleb Bench, John Nyberger, and John Stratton. Thanks to all of you for taking a bit of time out of your Saturday evening to gather together and finally remember Nick Pope. We will certainly miss him. And folks, if you liked what you saw today, then check out some of our other videos and check out Ben Woodruff also has some great YouTube channels as well. And of course, we're big fans of Skinwalker Ranch, and I'm sure that's going to be coming back on the air for another season before too long. So stay tuned on that, right, Kaleb?
Yeah, hopefully,
And,
hopefully a couple more months. So.
Yes, indeed. So again, thank you, folks, and just try to be try to add some more positivity in the world and try to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. And the world may be full of negativity, but don't fall victim to it. Don't be convinced that it's the only way is to embrace the negativity and tear others down that don't see the world through the same eyes that you do. Because this journey of life, as we've learned through this conversation this evening, is far too short, and human life and all that comes along with it is truly a fragile thing that we should take a little more time to appreciate. And again, thank you all for your time, folks. We will see you next time right here on the Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.